Listen up, get ready, I'm not gonna take no more. There's a revolution, a revelation going on in my soul. Buckle up, get ready, we're not gonna sit back.
Hello, all you citizens of the world. Welcome back to more Live from the Heartland. We're bringing on our second guest, who is no stranger to you regular viewers and listeners. He knows an awful lot about what's going on in the world, pays attention for a long time. The one and only Don Rose. Hello, Don.
How are you? Good to see you once again.
We're good. It's glad having you back. I got your weekly column, and it was headlined something to the effect of good news for President Biden, maybe for a change or something.
Yep.
Let's talk about that. What is your premise?
Well, there are two issues on it, slightly different, but amidst all the very, very bad news that he's had about sinking poll numbers and the indictment of his son, and who probably deserves it, but certainly Biden should not be bearing any of that problem, but he probably will. Anyway, the news has generally not been good for our president, and I noticed a couple of things have happened that are a little harbingers of possible. Well, I think they're good news anyway. Whether they turn out to be exactly winning, who can say at this point? The first is that the University of Michigan keeps a poll, a running poll of the public attitude toward inflation and general, which has been in decline for a long time. As you know from the past, even though the actual numbers on inflation are very, very good, it's been declining regularly. The people have not noticed it yet because the main sign of inflation they see are not the big numbers, the gross numbers, but the numbers they're paying at the grocery store and the gasoline pump. Well, the gasoline has come down, and there actually has been a slight down notch in groceries. And the interesting thing is that this number took a 13% jump upward, reversing a long-term downtrend and starting an uptrend. In other words, the general public now seems to be less afraid of inflation and is taking a somewhat more optimistic look. Well, if this continues, that's a great harbinger for the president, who really needs it. Now, to go along with that, Donald Trump, remember him, has come up with an issue he thinks is going to benefit him in his nuttiness, but is going to really help Biden. He has come out once again against Obamacare. As it turns out, you may remember he campaigned against Obamacare in 2016, and his first term he couldn't do anything about it. It was saved narrowly and by McCain in that famous thumbs down motion at one point, and that was a thumbs down to Donald Trump, not to Biden. Anyway, it seems to me, and to a few other people too, that Trump is somewhat obsessed with Obama. He sometimes thinks he's still running against Obama. He's never run against Obama, but he thinks he is. And the fact is that Obamacare is at an all-time high, and it's a bipartisan high, something in the vicinity of 58 to 60% of the people, including all kinds of union workers and blue-collar workers, as well as younger people, um, are very, very big on Obamacare. And Biden certainly needs something to help with the younger people. And Obamacare is a perfect issue because if you'll recall, some of us don't have to worry about this, but um, you can stay on your parents' insurance up to age 26. And I'm sure that makes a lot of young people, in their 20s feel pretty good. And the fear of losing it goes along with other people who, feel that they've got a very good thing here, an affordable, wide-ranging insurance policy. And this gives our president another issue with which to slap Trump going along with abortion, and we know abortion is a, excuse me. No, we know abortion is a powerful tool electorally. We've seen, all these red states come out with pro-abortion votes. So we've got kind of a 1-2 punch on abortion and to retain, to expand abortion and to retain Obamacare. And issues that cross over into Republican territory, which is what we really need. And it should revive the younger vote that may be a little, for many reasons, including Israel, are having problems with Joe Biden. So I consider these two things: the acquisition of another major issue to work with, plus the turnaround, and we hope it continues. There are other indications it may continue. The unemployment level is down to a near an all-time minimum of 3.7%. So I would say things are looking up. Certainly, it's not the whole story, and I can't predict a Biden win from this, but these are two strong elements to make us all feel better next November.
Do you think that some of his talking about the bad guy president, some of his talk turns off people, like that stuff about he'd be a dictator for a day, and he just doesn't seem to tone down anything to try to reach a broader audience than his so-called base. And I'm just wondering if does he think the base is big enough to elect him?
Well, we know that the base is not big enough to elect him. It's where they go beyond the base, and I think that may give some people pause. People remember Biden won by 7 million votes, and it looks like he's losing some of those people now. The early polls, but those don't predict anything at all. So I don't want to go discussing all these polls and tell you why not to pay any attention to it. However, Trump's cult is very, very strange. He may lose a few people around the edges. Certainly, if he's convicted of anything before Election Day, which is a big if, he will lose, according to what we can see, he can lose 5 or 6% of his base. But the other things are just fringe. Now, of course, in an election that is decided in 2 or 3 or 4 states, which is really what it is, by something under a total 100,000 votes, that 7 million margin doesn't mean much. It's not a democracy. Remember, we have this electoral college republic, and So we look for anything that shaves something off the edge of what he's got helps us. We don't know yet whether the talk about uh, being dictator only for a day, and then one of the things he can dictate is that he will be a dictator the next day, and so on and so forth. And he can keep declaring everything day one, which is far more likely. But I've kind of given up figuring out the cult-like nature of his main following, and we look and see how people, even within the Republican Party, there's still not a majority of people altogether going along with his 3 or 4 remaining opponents. He's getting an absolute majority of the votes. You go figure it out. People have a lot of choices there. They may not like Nikki Haley because she seems reasonable and she can talk reasonably on abortion. They don't seem to like Chris Christie, who gives an all-out attack. And some people even like this guy Ramaswamy, maybe because he's probably the only guy running who's more obnoxious than Trump.
Well, Don, one of the things that you didn't talk about in your good news for Biden is the situation in Gaza, in Israel, et cetera, which really, I keep saying this over and over. It seems like, people were really concerned and upset when Hamas attacked Israel, but Israel seemed to have been losing all along the high ground. And I think my sense is it's not just trying to get rid of Hamas. They're really just destroying the Gaza, and probably they'll go maybe the West Bank too. And it seems like there's really no place for people to go home to. And Biden seemed pretty in at the beginning with Israel. He's certainly mitigated his position. He's critical of Israel now. It's clearly there's a split between us and Israel. What's your sense about that and all the talk about young people who have suddenly learned all kind of stuff about Palestine? I mean, everybody knows more and more history about what has gone on in the Middle East. And I'm just wondering what you think the ramifications of that will be. I tend to think we'll come back, some of those people will come back if they only have a choice between Trump and Biden. But your thoughts?
Well, that's my thought too. And the greatest mistake that Biden made was that awful embrace of Netanyahu, and he's finally realizing. I don't know. I think he began to realize what a mistake it was, and he's now openly challenging Netanyahu on the conduct of the war. And I think if we've got 2 things to deal with here. One is the impact that this may have on our own election, and the other is what is happening in the world. Netanyahu wants to hang on and be as brutal as he can because he thinks that's the only way he's going to save his rear end, because he's got terribly low numbers after people have realized that the intelligence failures and the military failures are his fault, and that he has actually been subsidizing Hamas. He likes having an enemy there. Now that that's come out and Biden is making an open break with him, yes, I think Biden recovers some of those votes that are lost. People. We're losing 2 kinds of people. We're losing I say we and he interchangeably at this point in our society. I've never had to identify so strongly, and that's mainly out of fear of the opponent.
Yeah, I hear you.
But I think he's in jeopardy with a lot of Palestinian and other Arab voters who sympathize with the Palestinians. We've seen it. We've seen these open breaks, enough to lose in Michigan. And if he loses Michigan, he loses the election. So I think his final pushback may be a saving grace in this regard. I think it's very important. And if he can press and discipline Netanyahu, or help discipline the IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, he is trying to do. I think he's talking about opening up more paths for aid and so on. So he's trying to claw back from what was an untenable position.
Yeah.
And it looks, he's making the right steps, short of telling Netanyahu to get the hell out of there. But Netanyahu wants to hang on to that right-wing patch. So we have yet to see how it plays out. So on as far as impact here, my judgment is that he will claw back some of those votes, and it depends on what happens, in the next couple of months. Will the IDF, Netanyahu, or those crypto Nazis in Israel? And I support Israel, and I believe Israel has a right to exist. So I'm not one of those. I don't know if we've talked about this before. I think Israel has a right to exist as a Jewish state, so long as we recognize a dozen or more Arab states or Buddhist states, and even some places call themselves Christian states. So if there can be religious-based states, Israel certainly is entitled to its own, even though it's a young one and been there created under unfortunate circumstances in 1948. But to go back to it, much depends on how much this world influence will have on Netanyahu and some of these right wingers whose chants sounded better in the original German. So touchy situation, a very tricky one, and we're dealing with unpredictable figures.
Yeah, it is a rough one. And I do believe that Israel has a right to exist. I know that the Israeli Constitution is really good for all people.
Well, it's unfortunately, they don't really have a constitution, a written constitution. And if they did, they might have not had so many of these troubles. But they act as if they've been acting as if they had a constitution, the way Britain, acts as if it has a constitution, even though it does not.
Oh, that one's a new on me. I just remember probably talking with our friend Marilyn Katz about Israeli securing the rights or stating the rights of all the people who live within the border. I think the key really is, and where Netanyahu doesn't want, is a Palestinian homeland too. And I don't know how they're going to do that, but that's the only solution, because they're not going to. I don't know how they're going to build on all that rubble.
Well, the other thing Netanyahu has to do, or the government, if he is if Netanyahu is prevented by his constituency, his government from stopping it, he must put a halt. They must put a halt to the damage that's being done in the West Bank. These settlers, Israeli settlers in the West Bank, are brutalizing the people who should be built up for the two-state solution.
Yeah, it's a rough one, and we're gonna. I'm sure we'll talk about it again. And I had a bunch of other questions as usual, but we're running out of time, Don. So I want to thank you for coming on. And I don't know how people get your newsletter. If you ever want to share that, you could tell them now. But it's a really worthy piece of writing every week.
Well, thank you. I'll have to do it in advance because it comes out every Monday, so I miss this. But if I have a chance to plug the interview in general, I will do so. I'll put an addendum. I don't like to do a lot of bragging on my on my own column, but it's a pretty damn good column.
No, it is. How do people get it if they don't do? I mean, the only way is if you know your email and they ask.
Yes. Yeah. And anybody who is interested in it can write me. My email is donrose65@AOL.com, DONROSE65@AOL.com. And within a day, you will be put on the list for the Monday column.
Okay, brother. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you soon.